All right, so here we go. Welcome to Workshop Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, and today joining me is the master trash smith himself, Mr. Bryce the Waffle Beaver. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the pre-show chat that we've had so far and getting into it. Obviously, you can see, and those of you who are on the Patreon will be able to see the video. I'm sitting in my truck because we're on the road, and Bryce is sitting in a very white room.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's mostly from I have, what is it called? They're not lights. That's just the sun coming through my house. We have one of those.
Oh, skylights?
Yeah, skylights.
Well, it gives you a beautiful glow and backlight.
Thanks.
It really highlights the shadows of your eyes.
I got a haircut.
So the reason that I wanted to have you on the on the podcast here today, we were talking on the Instagram chat stuff. You brought up an interesting thing about motivation, and you mentioned eudaimonic values. Is that how you pronounce it?
I'm not sure. I say eudaimonic. I heard a lot of people say it differently. I'm probably wrong.
I'm probably wrong too, because I don't think I've ever actually heard anybody use it in a conversation. So here's the official word, spoken word. It's eudaimonic values. So if you want to give a quick rundown and explain that to people.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if I can explain it well. I'm not looking up anything right now, but I just think of it as kind of like your long-term virtuous goals. And I kind of like to tell people about it in reference to hedonism, or like hedonic goals, because most of us are familiar with the term of jumping on the hedonic treadmill, keeping up with the Joneses and that type of motivation. And that's what I grew up with, knowing and understanding. And it wasn't until a few years ago, I think I read like a Twitter thread from this guy, Sahil Bloom, and he mentioned eudaimonism. And that's where I kind of went down that rabbit hole of like, oh wow, like Aristotle kind of thought of eudaimonism and hedonism at the same time. And they're not opposites, they're kind of together. And a lot of people mistaken hedonism as bad in some way, but it's all part of like your motivational goals. And when you're in high school and you're trying to get good grades to go to college so that you can get a good job, those are somewhat hedonic goals. It seems like a long term when you're 13 years old in high school, but after you graduate from college or graduate from high school, they really become things that you accomplish, and it's over, it's done. And so a eudaimonic goal would be something more like, well, what are you working towards that's meaningful to you? And I hope I didn't get too much off the topic talking about hedonism, but I think of it as like the long-term life goal that I really only concentrated on and really thought of kind of a few years ago. And I think a lot of it was coming from Clubhouse, like talking to people in Clubhouse a lot.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. You talk to a lot of people, and like my brother, I have a brother who's a really good example of not having a long-term goal. It's not that he hasn't been successful, but he's 50 years old. He's a grandparent at this point, and he still says, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Right. And it's not necessarily, I don't think it's necessarily that I don't know what I want to be, as much as, like you said, it's your purpose, your motivation, your driving force, I guess, behind the decisions that you make. And if you don't have that in place, then you tend to get kind of pushed around by the wind, right? Like any whim that comes along, and you go, oh, let's chase that, and then you go off and you go chase the other thing. Is that kind of how?
Yeah, I mean,
I
think of it like a lot of people get stuck into having to pay a mortgage or like living out of their means because they think, well, if I get this house, then that'll solve a lot of problems. And that's not necessarily true. You get the house, you have a mortgage to pay, and you have to maintain it. The real only solution is if you own it outright, and you still have to pay property taxes. So there's all these levels of like the hedonic level doesn't ever go away. It's like you get one thing, you still have other things to do. And I think eudaimonic, you really have to focus on figuring out what can you do what are you willing to work towards and work on that will most likely not ever get accomplished, but it's worth it anyways to try.
It's like the old man that plants the maple tree sort of thing. Is that more where you're going? What you
I've
mean?
never heard that one. Is that a Canadian thing? I'm not sure.
Well, when's the best time to plant a tree, right? Like if you want to plant a fruit tree, when's the best time to plant the tree?
Oh yeah,
It was 20 years ago, right?
yeah.
The next best time is to do it now. And so with maple trees, and maybe this is a Canadianism, I guess. A maple tree, before you can tap it for maple syrup, it has to be at least 6 inches in diameter, and preferably like 10 to 12 inches in order to withstand being tapped every year. Otherwise, it's too much stress on the tree. And so that takes 20, 30, 40 years for a maple tree to be at a point where it's a sustainable producer. And so the old man who plants the apple tree, or who plants the maple tree, or who plants the fruit tree of any sort, he has no expectation of this will be something that's a benefit to me. It has benefit to the future generation who takes over that place. Does that kind of factor in that as well?
Yeah, I think so. But it's really more just about what are you, because that's kind of like to me, that's like an instant thing. Like you plant a tree, you don't have to do anything else. But it has to be more like a constant work, something that you're working towards. And, us as people who make things, I think we go through phases, right? As far as like hobbyists, I still consider myself very much more on the hobby spectrum than professional. And you're always trying to get better at making things. And if you're just making like cutting boards, you want to step up to something else. Maybe you want to make a chair, or you want to make desk, or you want to make a dining room table. And every time you step up, it's a thing. But what happens if you are able to do everything? You have all the tools and you have all the abilities. What happens after that? Like, what do you really want to do after that? And I think you have to be thinking about like, what's the important part of it for you? And a lot of times it's just a matter of people like to do that because it's part of their stress relief, and that's their hobby. And I think for a while, making things, especially on the lathe, it's, you get into flow state. It's very much like that. But I really took a deep look at everything that I've done in my career and what I liked and didn't like, and realized like I want to try and make something or work towards something, building things that's going to be worth pursuing, and that's actually building things from trash. And my overlying goal was to try to reduce landfill waste by using trash as a medium to make beautiful things. And to me, that seems impossible still, even though I'm trying to do this all the time. It still feels impossible. But to me, it's something that's worth pursuing because it just doesn't make sense to me to not do it.
Yeah, well, that actually kind of factors into why I make stuff too. I mean, I'm not an avid recyclist like you,
Yeah.
or trash smith. But one of the reasons that I make furniture, when I make furniture, especially for myself, is I can't buy something that's as high a quality as I can make, and I don't want my stuff to end up in the landfill. Like I want my great grandchildren to use the stuff that I make. And part of it is that environmental footprint. Is I understand that even if I use an exotic species from Africa or wherever, it's still going to be in something that is usable and repairable for generations to come. Like when I build something, I specifically build it with the idea of I want to be able to repair this, or it should be able to be repaired if it ever does break.
Oh, so you're a user of hide glue as well?
No, I don't like hide glue. Well, I take that back. I use both. I do use hide glue. I do use. Have you ever actually tried to reverse hide glue though?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, because like
Really?
I've started using it on my wedges, like for the
Oh, do you?
yeah, and it's actually really easy to reverse. It's shocking.
Really?
Yeah.
Every time I've tried to reverse it, it's been a nightmare. So it's like,
It's just steam, right? You just put, like, for me, I just boiled water and then put this thing over, and it just like I was able to kind of like pry it off easy.
maybe like the Type Bond hide glue isn't quite as user friendly.
It's colder where you are. Here in Hawaii, it's that like the air is already humid. It's already hot.
That's probably the problem is probably not the humidity then. It's the fact that your climate has already wrecked the joint.
Okay.
Anyway. Yeah. So that's one of the motivations behind why you do the recycling plastic stuff, is just like the long term reducing the landfill waste and not being a producer of garbage to the same extent.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is because, like, I see precious plastics and I see other people recycling plastic as well. And for the most part, it's very rare that I see something that's like very useful for the long term. A lot of things that are being recycled are actually, I think the most common is actually like the beer can caddy, like the beer can holders. Like a lot of that is actually recycled plastic now, but you still have to like recycle it after, and it's a consumable thing. And
yeah, it gets recycled once and then gets turned into garbage again anyway.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we can find like a final place for it. Like a final. To me, I think our use of plastic over the past 100 years, this should be a temporary thing, and we should see, just like the way we've seen different types of wood have an era in the history. I'm hoping that we'll find ways to incorporate recycled plastic so it becomes an era of history, because we have the technology to, like, we're already starting to use more biodegradable type of corn-based plastics, and I'm hoping that we'll find a place for all the plastic that we have now so that it can be permanently useful in the state that it's in. And that's what I'm kind of looking forward in terms of recycling plastic. And it's funny because I think when I first made a mallet, I was like, oh, that's dumb. Everybody's making stupid mallets anyways.
Well, that's actually one of the things that I appreciate about the way you're using plastic, because like there's, I see a lot, no, I guess not a lot, but most of the time when you see like recycled plastic, it's an attachment to something, right? Like it's, I'm using this as a decoration, or I'm using this as an accent or something like that. Or like I'm sure you've probably seen like the art type of thing, art installations where people are making a statement about recycle. Are they coming for you? Do you need to run?
No, I think I just live on a kind of like near a busy street, so sorry.
So the police weren't coming for you?
No.
But anyway, that's like you've seen the art installation type of things where it's like a pile of garbage or whatever, and it's a statement against man's wastefulness and blah, blah, blah. And while I can appreciate the sentiment of the art, it's still a pile of garbage.
Yeah.
Whereas you, when you're making something, like it becomes a functional thing. And for the most part, it will probably last for as long as it needs to last, right? Or longer than the person who owns it. And then like when did you make those stools? That wasn't too long ago, was it? You finished up the...
It's been about, like, I made I don't know if you know Ben from Condit Rose Creations, but I made a set with Ben, and that's like about a year and a half ago. And then I made another set just recently because I have too much polypropylene. But even that, I think it's okay, but I don't think it's comfortable enough. So I think I have to rethink that. It needs to be comfortable to use,
Well, what you need to do is get yourself like some heat resistant pants, or like some bunker gear, something like that. Get it nice and hot and malleable and sit on it for a few minutes, kind of mold in there, and then you could do be customized chairs for people, right?
Oh yeah, I'm still, for some reason I got really obsessed with chair making, and I'm like on a quest right now to figure out how to make a stick chair. So that's another weird obsession.
That could be cool, actually.
Yeah,
because you could do the crest rail and the curved arms and everything all out of plastic, and that would be so much, like, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, it'll look unique, but getting that shape and everything, that'll be a little difficult to figure out, because I don't have like a pie enough to melt everything, so I'll have to do it in sections, and so it'll be difficult just either way. But it's going on in my head. This is the crazy stuff that goes on in here.
Well, that's okay. It's the crazy people who make a difference, right? That's the thing.
That's what Apple told me.
Why? My brain's drawing a blank here. What I was going to ask. How much loss do you have if you're reusing a piece that you've already used? Like, if you were to, like, I can build a table out of wood, and then I can rip apart that table and have a new table, but it's going to be smaller because of the loss. Is there a significant amount of loss with plastic? Because I mean, all of the waste from the tooling, you can technically collect and melt that down and reuse that too, right?
Yeah, and actually like the lathe stuff, the stuff I get off of the lathe is some of the best stuff because it's already so thin. So I can kind of really decrease the air bubbles and everything. But I'm trying not to do that because it's just so messy and I lose some, just from like the wind blowing or something. It gets lost and it ends up with the trash dust. Like I have a separate vacuum that I use just to clean up my recycled plastic. And I'm not sure exactly how much that is, but that's where all the losses were. Theoretically, you don't lose anything if you melt it at the right temperature.
So what is going down the making route then, beyond the motivation? What's the recipe for melting? Like HDPE is what you use mostly, right?
Yeah, it's like so I use like an induction hot plate with the Dutch oven that I bought used. And I just put right now I'm using a mold that's about 300 grams of recycled plastic. And that's like, seems to be the right amount for, that seems to be a manageable amount. So it's like a 20-minute heat cycle where I'm constantly taking it and twisting it. And it kind of gives a really good melt. Whereas this is bigger, this is about 500 grams. And it takes about an hour to get like a really good melt. So it's not like a linear progression, and it took a lot of experimentation to get there. So
have you produced a video about the way you do it yet, or no?
Not
I don't remember seeing one.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do that too, because I guess not too much people. I don't know. No offense, but it might be more popular by the time this comes out. But when your podcast blows up, maybe my website will be up. I just opened up like a little hobby online e-commerce store where I'm selling these mallets, and I'm trying to figure out all the kinks right now of e-commerce stuff. So I'm terrible at it right now.
Yeah, you and me both.
It's difficult to also tell the story that I'm trying to tell, because a big part of what I'm trying to do is say, like the mallet, it is a useful mallet. Like I like it a lot, but it has its applications. Like you're not going to use this like a sledgehammer. But this is a third life piece of wood. Its first life was a tree. Its second life was a baseboard. And then I took it, cleaned off the glue and the finished nails, and turned it to a handle. The plastic is second life plastic. And what I want people to think about is when they buy this product is, hey, this is just part of the story. Like, what's the life that you're going to give it? It starts a new story with you. And I hope that resonates with some people to want to have a mallet that's going to continue on.
Well, it does, although that's technically third life plastic as well, right? It was a dinosaur at one point.
Well, a dinosaur or something living
or
in
a plant.
Yeah, plant or dinosaur, yeah.
Well, I guess most likely a plant, but...
Bioorganic material from millions of years ago, yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, who knows? Maybe they recycled it back then, too. It could be like a infinite life plastic.
Exactly. Yeah, what's the statistic is like... I forget the exact statistic, but it's like you're likely every other breath or something like that or every other drink something to have drank something that has been through somebody else at some point in history.
Yeah, it makes me think of like, in Frozen. Well, you have kids, so Frozen, like how water has memory.
Yeah.
Like, man, I wonder how much Olaf has been through people.
Well, I thought you were going to go to Waterworld.
Oh.
Did you ever watch that?
I've only seen it in parts. That's a kind of a weird movie. I don't think the Hawaii film industry is too proud of that one.
That's hands down one of the dumbest movies I've ever seen in my life. But I think the part that confused me most was what I thought you were going to bring up. Is like Kevin Costner is peeing into a cup and then runs it through his water recycler to drink, right? And meanwhile, it's like, are you telling me that you're surrounded by water and yet your urine is easier to purify than the ocean? Like,
well, yeah, we don't really have a freshwater problem. We have a energy problem, right? Because you can just distill salt water.
Have you ever been to Lake Superior at all, the Great Lakes?
No, I've never been to like that part of the country.
Yeah, well, we just a couple days ago is when we were at Lake Superior. And that one single lake has 10% of the world's freshwater supply in it.
That can't be true.
No, that's what the signs say. It's insane. Well, it's an insanely big lake. It's It's
almost an
mind-blowing.
ocean, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like you can't see the shore on the other side. Like it's 200 and at its widest, it's like 273 kilometers or something like that. So that's like
It's pretty
100
big.
and yeah, it's like 160 miles or something like that.
I mean, I have been to Chicago and been on the coast over there, but that's not Lake Superior, right? That's like Lake Michigan, or is that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think Chicago's on Lake Michigan.
Yeah,
No,
I mean, that's huge.
anyway, that's totally off topic. I guess environmental. We're talking about environment.
Oh, we're supposed to be talking about eudaimonism, eudaimonicism. That's not a word, I don't think.
Well, I think it all ties in though, right? Because it goes back to why does the old man plant the tree? Why does the old Bryce grind up the plastic? It's not because you want to destroy the planet. It's because you want to
I lost you
remove
for a
that from the
second.
waste. Hopefully, I'm assuming that's because you're trying to protect the environment for your posterity in the future too, right? Like, is that part of that motivation as well? Like you have a kid, and I'm assuming that you don't want them to grow up in a world absent of trees and life, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I don't even think it's necessarily just for the future of my kid. It's just to me, it just makes no sense that we have all these materials and we just like decide to put it all in a landfill. Like it costs so much to have these things, and we forget about it once we stop using it. And that's really what I'm trying to figure out is like how does it make sense that we like our human habit went that way versus the other way of treating materials to be reused and to be used more usefully throughout their lifespan instead of like leaving it in a pile so that hopefully someone later will figure out how to make it useful later. Like I don't know. It just that part doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think you kind of know that I'm a bit of a I want to kind of preface this like I was a big Tesla investor, and when I heard Elon talk about like why we should go electric, it made sense to me that he had like a really good argument. And you know, I'm not like a huge Elon Musk fan now because he's kind of like crazy, but I do appreciate what he's done for my thinking at least. And what he was saying about energy is it's like we're gonna run out of fuel, like oil. We're gonna run out of something eventually. Like we just know that there's a finite amount. Like and he's saying there's probably like 100 or 200 years left more, but we're gonna have to figure out that problem. Why not accelerate that process of going to a new solution? And to me, that made sense.
Yeah, I agree. Despite the fact that I'm sitting in a 6.2 liter gas truck, there is the thing is there's a use case. In my mind anyway, there's a use case for everything. If you're going to waste something recklessly instead of trying to preserve it and conserve it for as long as possible, then you don't really deserve to have that thing. And that's where like I appreciate like you're making the mallets and stuff like that, because you are giving that essential garbage another life, and potentially a life that's going to last hopefully forever. Eventually they're going to end up on the grandkids' wall. This is Grandpa's mallet, and it'll be an art piece, but it's still not in the garbage. And like you said, that story is still continuing and it's still evolving. But,
yeah, I mean, I don't have any of my grandpa's tools because he didn't really have any, but I have my wife's grandpa's ball peen hammer, and it's tiny. It's like the smallest ball peen hammer I've ever seen, but it's like so cool. Like I love having that little ball peen hammer, and my wife's family loves that I have it too, and that I use it.
And that's one of the things that my son getting into blacksmithing a little bit, and we're trying to get my wife's grandfather's blacksmithing tools, but my father-in-law is just not, well, I might use them. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're missing half your foot, dude, and you can't walk. You're not going to be using these tools. Why don't you give them to your grandson who wants to use them? And but anyway, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Well, we should wrap it up here because you have to go rescue your child at some point, don't you?
I have about an hour left. So.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll Well, let's leave it here though, and we'll go on to the after show, and we'll have a bit of a conversation there.
Oh well, before that, I kind of want to ask you a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Because we're speaking about eudaimonic values, and I was wondering, like, what can you sum up your eudaimonic intent with this podcast and everything that you're doing?
Good question. I think the intent of the podcast is to normalize conversations that pertain to makers. Like this hasn't particularly been a mental health therapy type of thing. This conversation anyway. I mean, I guess it does to some extent because, your motivation is, if you have a motivation, you're more likely to be mentally healthy. But it's to normalize conversations that involve mental health and motivations for people that don't necessarily come out in normal conversation. Because I think the more people that we talk to in one-on-one conversations like this and in conversations with people on the street, the more we're going to discover that we're all pretty closely aligned. I think a lot of the world's problems come from a lack of communication. And, like most people want their children to be better off than they were, right? They want to be happy, they want to be healthy, and they want to be left alone. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, that's common.
Yeah, and yet
it should be common.
It should be common, and yet for some reason the discourse that's going on in the world, on social media, politically, on the media, whatever, is, unless you agree with me 100%, you're my enemy. Is how discourse is going these days, and I think as more people talk about things that aren't just their little niche on the internet, the more people will realize that, hey, yeah, he has a valid point on the recycling the plastic. Normally, I drive my lifted diesel pickup truck with the truck balls hanging on the back, and I roll coal on every Prius I see. Maybe that's just a total redneck Albertan Canadian thing, but you've probably seen that in Hawaii too, I'm assuming.
Yeah, well, I've seen it in San Diego, like a coal roll, where like they roll in front of the Tesla.
Yeah.
Like just like exhaust as much diesel as possible.
Yeah. But those type of people, as much as they're annoying to everybody, 90% of what they believe is the same as what you and I believe, right? And to go to the opposite extreme, the opposite extreme of that, I'm not saying opposite extreme of me or you or anything like that, but the opposite extreme of that with the ultra liberal, I guess, whatever that ends up being, you can disagree with something that they do, but still 99% of what they believe in, you believe in as well. And so I guess maybe that's the value or the intent of the podcast, is just to kind of make those conversations normal and to help everybody understand that everybody, one, goes through a struggle. Everybody wants essentially the same thing. And hopefully we can all get there by working together.
So you're like bridging the gap. Yeah, you're bridging the gap.
I'm trying to, because I'll fully admit that I swing to the conservative side of the spectrum, right? Like but at the same time I don't.
Conservative in Canada is different than conservative here.
That's very true. That's very true. But that's the thing though, is what's the concept? Trying to remember what it is. Drawing a blank though. There's a psychological effect that everybody undergoes, and they assume that everybody believes what they believe. Right?
Are you talking about like the Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman thing? Kind of like the what you see is all there is.
No,
like
I don't.
Perception. Oh, okay.
No, it's I'm just trying to think of the theorem name, but I just finished a semester, and like last week I spent probably close to 35 hours writing a paper and traveling, so my brain is pretty well shut off right now. But anyway, yeah, this is just, it's kind of a human bias to believe that you believe what I believe.
Yeah.
And for the most part, that's actually true until you get into the extremes of things. But the social media and the media empire in general, I guess, thrives on those margins, those things that you're going to get fired up and fight about. that's where social media makes its money, because that's where the engagement is.
That's why
whereas-
Full Steam Design can make concrete videos and just
Yeah. Did you follow David Wood? DW Wood Builds? Yeah, it's like I just saw on Instagram that he's at like 10,000 followers now, and I started following him when he was like 120, and I'm pretty certain most of his is that whole dry pour concrete thing too.
Oh
But,
yeah, no,
yeah.
I saw that too. Yeah, I do follow him.
Yeah, and I mean, good for him. Like, but that's the internet, you know. But whereas conversations like this, I'm sure that you have something that I disagree with, and I'm sure that I believe something that you disagree with. But we've had a good conversation, and I'm pretty certain that we probably believe mostly the same things. You know,
I don't
think
know,
it's bad
kinda
to waste.
crazy. Yeah.
You probably don't believe that living in Canada is a good thing, and I
Oh,
don't believe that living in Hawaii is a good thing.
I think it's good for people that can handle the cold. I cannot handle the cold, so it's not good for me. But it's good for you. Like, you seem to be fine, polar bear status. You know.
Well, truth be told, right now I am bloody well dying, because it's I'm sitting in my truck with the windows rolled up, and it's warm outside, so I'm sweating pretty good. So that's one of the reasons why we're gonna have to wrap up our conversation here. But I appreciate, or I'm gonna turn into like that tragic child story. You know, don't leave your child in the car during the summer.
So sorry to do this. Then one more question: what's a good book that you recommend? Because I always like to ask people that.
A good book that I recommend. What type of book are you thinking? Like just like a good book to read, or something
for your
that's
audience.
thought-provoking?
For your audience.
For my audience, Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn.
Okay.
That's
I've
a
never
good
heard
one.
of that one.
It's based on this conversation. Actually, you should read it. It's
Okay.
it's about motivation, and it's actually good. It'd be good for parents of younger children. Your kid is younger than mine, I believe, right?
She's 5.
Okay. So yeah, there's a good time for you to read this book, actually. So Punished by Rewards by Alfie Kohn. It's about motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and how rewards and punishments are both detrimental to intrinsic motivation. And so, yeah, it's an excellent book. Another book that I would recommend everybody read would be The Nature Principle by Richard Louv.
Okay. I'm trying to think if I've heard of that one.
It's an excellent book.
Might have.
I have a whole list of books, honestly.
Oh, you should put it on Patreon, like the list of book recommendations.
That's a good idea, actually. Just my reading list of books.
Yeah. And then we can talk about it on the after show, so that people will be curious about.
Good idea. Now we've given some suggestions. Stay tuned for the rest of the suggestions afterwards.
There we go.
But thank you for the great lead-in. Thanks for the great conversation, Bryce. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. And with that, I'm going to say bye. Why don't you tell people where to find you? And
I think I'm Waffle Beaver. I think I'm the only Waffle Beaver on the social medias.
Why Waffle
I'm not on
Beaver?
TikTok. Okay, so waffles, because I like waffles and the waffle structure especially, because it can make it both flexible and rigid. And I'm trying to figure out a way to incorporate like some type of waffle structure structurally into something I do, but I haven't figured it out yet. But beavers, because I've always been fascinated by like the ingenuity of beavers, like the way that they're able to basically take down logs. That like they can take down whole maple trees, you know, like they're crazy, and you know they'll build dams, and after that dam gets built, they really are able to make a whole habitat for the animals around them. The only thing it sucks for is people that have houses near the beaver dam. So, oh, that's you.
Not anymore, but when I was growing up, yeah.
Other than that, though, beavers are beneficial for most of the mammals and wildlife around them.
Good explanation. And with that, off to the after show.
All right. Thanks for having me.
I just want to say thank you to the founding members of the Workshop Therapy Patreon family. Eric of Overall Makerworks, Keith Drennan of Blackthorn Concepts, Brad of Brad's Customs, Matthew Serio from Arciano Serio, and the Grant Alexander. If you want to join on Patreon to support the show or just say thank you, I'd appreciate it.